morning. For those who don't know me, my name is Barb Cannard, and I am honored to be part of this amazing music team. And I'm also honored to be part of an amazing board. That's what's happening today. It's been a little while since I've been up here. So for those who don't know me, sorry. Because it's kind of impossible for me to tell a short story, but here's why it works. Because last week, Danita and I had this agreement. She didn't know it. So last week, Danita spoke a little shorter than she needed to, and so therefore I could take her minutes, and I could speak a little longer today. And I tried to figure out what I was going to call my talk. I had several choices. Succeeding together is one. It could be working together. It could be Danita's talk on circulation, part 2. Or it could be the sequel to my previous talk a few years ago, Abundance is My Life. Are you ready to receive? It could be any of those. So pick whichever one works for you. But before I get into that, because I've had a lot of questions, I just wanted to show you a picture that we took on July 18. This is my mother-in-law, who I call Mom, and she turned 95. And that's my husband. All right. In this time, end of July, we've had a decent summer. It hasn't been too hot. But the East Coast and the Midwest have had some heat. Have they not? I saw one headline, 200 million people being scorched, which I thought was a little bit dramatic, but okay. And so I just thought this was the perfect time to talk about the ice storm of February 2021. So for those who weren't here in the Willamette Valley when that happened, at my property we had 4 inches, approximately that much, of freezing rain on top of everything, but especially on top of our branches. And what was evidenced to us, we already knew, but it was a reminder that softwood, like fir trees, bend underweight, and hardwood, like oak trees, break underweight. We have both. We saw both happen. In fact, when we woke up that night, for those who were here, I suppose I should have done a trigger alert, but it sounded like a war zone. And so we woke up in the morning to this. This is our roof. And we had 6 branches that were 6 to 8 inches in diameter at their widest point. And you can see the gutter kind of got smashed. And you can see there's a power line in a not normal direction. And it was actually laying over part of 2 vehicles that were in our driveway. And the mast that the electricity feeds in through, the mast, instead of being straight up, was at a 45-degree angle, as were 4 other houses on our street. So there's 12 houses on our street. So 5 of us had that happen because we live in an oak grove. And as the oak trees broke, significant sized branches with lots of fingers coming off of them fell into the lines, and it pulled all the lines. So from these, we ended up having 6 holes in the roof on the far side of the roof, and it knocked off a vent cover and collapsed the vent a little bit. And then what you can't really see from this picture, but another branch came and fell right through there, and it went all the way through the roof, through the eave, and then it bounced back out and landed on the ground. And I'm waiting for that picture. Oh, and there's the little cutie pie right there. And what you can't see is that much, again, is out into the yard. So it was a significant branch. And so that happened. We can get rid of the pictures there. And what I found interesting is when we registered on the website the night before at 7:30 to say, hey, we have no electricity, can we mute that picture? Thank you. As did 600,000 other people in Oregon, Portland, all of this area. It overloaded their website. And so even though every single house on our street had registered, it didn't register anybody. Well, I called in the morning because of that line that was down over my vehicles, because there's a special number you call for that. And so as far as the electricity company knew, ours was the only house that didn't have power. And they're very smart when they do repairs. They do where they can get the best effect for the amount of work. So if one street has one house that's out and another street has 10 houses that's out, they're going to work on that other street first because more people will recover more quickly that way. It's very efficient, it works, it's beautiful when it works. But it was beautiful. We came out in the morning, there was a tree across our branch across our road, and a group of us just kind of formed. And the neighbor across the street says, well, the first thing we need to do is move that tree. And I said, actually, the first thing we need to do is move your car. Because we looked up, and he realized why, and then he just tossed me the keys. Oh, okay. So as much as we could, we moved vehicles to an area that didn't have a lot of risk. And then we all started talking and evaluating. And I don't know exactly how it happened, but this is what everybody decided. I was the project leader. So odd. The person across the street, he was the crew chief. The person 3 houses down, he was the equipment supplier, the chainsaws. He had extra chainsaws. And he could sharpen them and he could repair them. And we all had fuel for chainsaws, so we all brought out our resources of that. And then this neighbor over here, he's like, well, I can't operate a chainsaw, but I can lift. So he was a laborer, and I was a laborer, and my husband was a laborer, except my husband, about 3 days before the ice storm, went into a migraine storm that actually lasted about 3 years. But, and he's doing better. He's doing better. But he was not in great condition at the time of the storm. We moved downstairs because we had a fireplace. Not a wood stove, but we had a fireplace. So we moved Mom downstairs, and we were feeding the fire every 3 hours to keep her warm as we all got to work. So the first thing we did was clear that branch from the road so that emergency vehicles could get through if they needed to. But then we also put up 2 sets of caution tape that were kind of at the end of our driveway and at the start of the next neighbor's driveway. Because while the lines were down, her internet line was down and across the street, but it was still functioning. And she's a school teacher, and she was having to teach remotely because, of course, this was right in the middle of COVID. So we put up caution tape to try to protect her line as long as possible. We cleared the branch from the road, and then we looked at everybody's driveways, and we said, okay, people are going to need to get out. So I would go to each house and figure out who needed what, and then I would tell the crew chief, and he would get the team going while I went to the next house. And we just, by the end of the day, we had all of the driveways cleared, and we knew what we were going to be doing the next day. So we all headed back to our homes. Well, remember that branch that fell through the roof and jumped out? Well, when it jumped out, it had shifted slightly, and so it pulled plywood up, and it was like this. So my husband and I got a tarp, and we got a ladder, and we went up, and we were so exhausted that we didn't even, we tried to push some of it down, but really we just kind of grouped the tarp over the thing and put some bricks and hoped it would do its thing. And then we went into the house for the night. The next day, we all came back out, and we said, all right, let's work on clearing people's front yards. Backyards, you're kind of on your own. But front yards, we'll go ahead and start getting those cleaned up. So we did. We chunked stuff up, we piled stuff up, worked all day long on that, most of the day. We headed back around, I think it was like around 3. And we said, okay, well, we'll see you all tomorrow. And my neighbor across the street said, actually, we have one more thing we have to do today. And my husband's just like, oh, seriously. And he says, we're going to get those limbs off your roof. And I said, oh, no, that's okay. It's gonna wait till tomorrow. And he said, Barb, I wasn't actually asking for permission. So we set up a ladder, and he and his adult son, who works for a company that does a lot of tree clearing and such, and he's a firefighter, so he was very familiar with this type of work. So they went up the roof and with a rope and had a bucket, and they would tell me what they needed, and I'd put stuff in the bucket, and they would pull it up, and they'd get to work. And we eventually, through quite a process, got all the limbs off the roof. We only damaged one window in the process. It was perfect. It was fine. It was just a window and a gutter. And then my husband got up there with the tarp, and the three of them laid the tarp over where the 6 holes were and got that prepared. Because, of course, I would say it was raining. It was kind of raining on and off, but really it was all that ice that was still up in the trees was melting. And it was like rain, right? So I guess rain had fallen, stopped for a little while, and then melted and continued to fall. That's what happened. So we got up in the morning, and we noticed water was coming in right over our kitchen window on the inside of the house. And we knew that was from that guy that had popped in and out again. So our tarp wasn't working well. So we got up there, we retarped, and then I decided I would go into town and get supplies so we could fix the roof. So I did. And what I noticed was, as I'm driving out of our street and through the neighborhood, there's another street that got hit almost as hard as we did. And their street still kind of looks like a disaster area. And I just kind of noted that and went along and got my supplies and came back. And then, I don't know why I'm standing behind. So then came back, and we went up on the roof to fix everything. And by this time it was kind of afternoon because we'd still been doing cleanup. And we looked at everything, all the stuff we'd brought up on the roof, and realized, well, we'd forgotten our gloves. It's cold, it's wet, you're dealing with shingles, and you're dealing with plywood. And my husband is still in this migraine storm. And he has a moment of despair, and he says, Barb, this is too much for us. We cannot do this. We just need to go back down. And I said, honey, look, I know we need help, but we don't have it. So let's just do what we can, and then we'll go down. And he sighed, and we started, and I'm just ripping plywood with my bare hands. 30 seconds later, I'm not kidding you, 30 seconds later, a pickup pulls up to the barricade that we had, and this guy gets out. And we're up on the roof trying to work, and we're like, what's this? Okay, whatever, working. And then we hear him holler up, and he says, hi, I work for a roofing company, and we just finished a house a couple streets over, and so I'm just kind of driving around to see who might need help. Do you need help? And I said, what? It just wasn't computing. Because I'm like, didn't I just ask for help? And what? And so he repeats everything, and then he says, do you need help? And my husband says, yes! So he came up on the roof, and he looked at what we were dealing with. He says, I just have just enough leftovers from this last job that I can patch this to get you through the night, and then I can bring a crew back tomorrow, and we could actually fix it for real and replace the plywood and all that stuff. And my husband says, can I show you what's under this tarp over here? So he pulled it up, and they looked, and he goes, oh, yeah, and I can get a new vent cover and a new tube, and yeah, we can do this. So that's what happened. They came back the next day, and they fixed the roof. I mean, we paid them, but they fixed the roof, and they replaced the panel that was under the eave that had gotten punctured, and that was wonderful. And while that was happening, our neighbor across the street, the son, came over, and he says, hey, my company is going to be up here in just a couple of days to help out. So if you want to get all of your branches in the backyard and haul them up to the front, then they'll cut you a deal and we can take care of that. We said, oh, okay. So we went into the backyard and we started cutting the small, if the branches were that big, we were just cutting them off the big branch, right? And then he would cut them off, and then I'd take them and I would drag them up to the front. When I say up, I do mean up because we live on a hill, so I'm up to the front. Big branches trailing behind me. So we got everything up there, and the pile was about 10 feet by 10 feet by about 10 feet because of how tall I am not. That's as high as I could stack it. So we got it up there, and then we continued to work in the backyard. And the day came and went, and the day came and went, and we're still making progress in the neighborhood, but the company doesn't come, and the neighbor comes over very embarrassed, and he says, I'm so sorry. I know I told you they were coming, but they got called to another job that has significant need, and so they're going to do that. And I said, oh, okay, no problem. So I told my husband, and we decided, well, all right, we'll get the pickup ready, and we'll cut up all these limbs into smaller chunks and throw them in the back of the pickup, and then I'll start making trips to the transfer station for yard debris. And we started cutting, but again, my husband still in his migraine storm. We start cutting, and my husband says, Barb, seriously, I need to go in and lay down. This job is too big. I need to go lay down. We can't do this. And I said, sweetie, look, I know we need help. And we don't have it. But we're just going to make as much progress as we can, a little bit every day. And he says, I can't. And he turned to walk inside. 30 seconds later, as I'm putting stuff in the truck, I hear this voice down the street, this woman's voice that hollers up, hey, we have an empty trailer and we're hauling off yard debris. Can we take all your branches? And I said, what? What is happening? So she told me again, and I said, where are you taking them? And she says, well, we're a church group, and we're just going to haul them, put them in our church parking lot. We'll figure out what we're doing with them later. And I said, oh, well, are you sure? Okay, sure. So they brought their truck and trailer around, and I ran inside to tell Steve what was going on, and so he came back out, and we cut up stuff, and with their long trailer, we didn't have to cut up as much stuff. So we filled their trailer completely. We filled our pickup, and ended up filling up the back of the pickup, their pickup as well, and we got the whole pile done in one trip. And so we followed him up to the church parking lot. We started unloading, and she said, well, this way you don't have to wait in line at the free drop-off. And I said, there's a free drop-off? So she told me where it was at, and I came back, and my neighbor came out, and he says, where'd all your stuff go? And so I told him the story, and I said, yeah, there's this free drop-off up at this place. And so he got online to go look at it, and he came out, and he says, the free drop-off is full. I said, well, okay, because we still had stuff in the backyard. I said, well, okay, that's fine. I mean, we made great progress. He said, but they started another one at a different location. I said, where's it at? So he told me. So I went in and I told my husband, hey, this is what I've learned. So in the morning, we got up and we just quietly went over to our neighbors, the ones who had taken all the limbs off the roof for us. And they had a pile of debris, and we just started quietly clipping and putting it in our pickup, trying not to wake them, which they were awake. So he came out, he says, what are you doing? I said, we're taking your pile to the free drop-off. And he says, wait a minute. So he ran in and grabbed his gloves, and we filled his pickup too, and so we went down, so we completely cleared his front yard. And that didn't take as long as we thought. So then we went 2 houses down to another neighbor that had a pile in their front yard, and we all did that. And he came out, wait a minute. And so he came out to help. And so pretty soon, all the front yards were clear, completely clear. And the person who had supplied the chainsaws, he has a wood stove for heat. So as we had larger chunks of oak trees, we all just quietly put him in our little carts, and we wheeled him down and dumped him in his yard, which is what he wanted. So we weren't just being rude. He was, no, put him right there. So he got this giant mound of oak pieces. And we were without electricity for 10 days. Day 7, well, night, about 9 o'clock at night on day 7, the electricity company finally arrived, 9 o'clock at night. And I'd read an article that, these guys were coming from all kinds of different states, and they were working 20-hour days. And the article said, one of the guys says, yeah, some people come out and give us cookies and granola bars and whatever, and other people are kind of angry. And I thought, oh, well, I know what I'm doing. So when I was out getting supplies, I got a bunch of protein bars and granola bars and whatever, just waiting for them to arrive. So when they did at 9 o'clock, I was so excited so I could go up and say, here, have some sustenance. And they were from Idaho. And they drove down our street just to kind of figure out what was going on, and they had stopped right in front of our house because we had a big branch in this line, a big branch in this line. Oh yeah, and this power pole over here was leaning. And the only reason it didn't fall is because a huge portion of this tree fell right on the tension wires, holding it in place. So when people were coming out to trim, we're like, don't touch that tree. So the electricity company, the guy's standing there and he's looking at our street, at all these branches, and he's just in shock. And he said, we had no idea. We've been working this whole area for a week. We had no idea you'd been hit this hard. Your street has been hit the hardest of any street we have seen. And I thought, you should have seen it 7 days ago. But that night, they got all the branches out, and they were notifying their people, hey, this street needs some help. And in the meantime, everybody was calling. We were calling electricians and whatever to come take care of our masts. So when they came to take care of the mast, they said, this is quite amazing. So we've looked at every house on this street, and all of you, if your mast had bent 1 more inch, it would have pulled the wires completely out of the meter, and you would have had a much larger challenge on your hands. Every one of us. So meters and our masts were getting replaced left and right, literally, and wires were doing whatever they were doing. So the electricity company came again, apologized, explained what had happened, and got to work on taking care of lines that were down and getting them where they needed to be. And the beauty of that is they rerouted ours. We didn't even ask. They just said, we're going to take it over to that pole after they replaced it, which they did, which was fun to watch. So they, instead of the power line going over our vehicles, it now goes across the front yard, so we don't have to deal with that in the future. So that's kind of nice. And and the city came up because somebody suddenly thought, I wonder what's happening up in the Oak Grove, because that's what they call our neighborhood. And they came up and they were not very happy that we hadn't had attention sooner. And I wasn't bothered by it at all, because prior to the ice storm, I knew these neighbors, and I knew these neighbors, and I knew these neighbors. And now I know my whole street. Because we all decided to come together as a group. We had a common goal. We set our egos aside, whatever that may have meant for anybody. And we all evaluated each other's gifts and then utilized each other's gifts. And we all gave freely of those gifts. And then that law of circulation kept rolling through our neighborhood, right? Because they came and fixed the roof. They took limbs off our roof. They took limbs out of our neighborhood. We had free drop-off, so their yards were getting clear. Everybody, this wave of prosperity just kept rolling through the neighborhood. It was beautiful. I honestly wouldn't trade a second of it. It was just beautiful to observe. And when I went, we finally got electricity. Day 10, the street behind us got it a day before we did. And we celebrated for them. We were so excited because we knew ours was coming. Okay. But in order for us to have it, they had to fix what was happening on that second hardest hit street, because everything comes through their transformers over to where we are. So we knew we had to wait till that one got fixed, and they needed some significant help. But for whatever reason, and I'm not judging at all, I'm saying I don't know their story, I don't know what their resources were, I have no idea why. But even on day 9, when I went into town, their street still looked like a disaster area. And ours, other than we didn't have electricity, you couldn't tell anything happened. It was just amazing to me. It was just a demonstration to me of connecting, staying in oneness with each other, just working towards a higher purpose, a greater good. It was just beautiful. And I've been wanting to tell you that story for 4 years. And so I think about our community here. I think about Unity of Salem. And we are our own community, and we're part of a larger community. But within our community, we have a lot of projects. We have teams. We've had the Dreaming Together group that is still helping to come up, what's the word I'm looking for? Filter. That's the word I'm looking for. Everything they have and get it down into maybe some manageable pieces. But there's going to be projects coming out of that too. And the board has 6 people. And team leaders, I think we have, 3 or 4? And some of those teams are pretty small. So I just want us to think about that for a moment as we go into meditation. So get comfortable in your chairs, feet on the floor. If you have something in your lap, maybe sit it on the empty chair next to you. Don't sit it on the lap next to you. Sit in an empty chair on the floor. Close your eyes. Let's take a deep breath in. Let it out to signal the body we're about to go deep. What is it that you have in you that can help the greater good? What gifts do you have? What time or talents or treasure do you have to help out someone in need? Whether that's a person you know individually, whether that's a group, whether that's Unity of Salem, whether that's the larger community. And sometimes we feel like whatever it is we're being asked to do may be too much, and that may be true. So how do we determine what it is that is ours to do? Well, I'm going to read you a little something that might sound familiar. A gift God gave me to each and every one is to focus on spirit, to believe in the sound. If you listen to what you hear, the Christ within you is so very clear. If you listen in the silence. What is mine to do? The answer may come to you right now. It may come to you next week. It may come to you in a few months. It comes to you when it's supposed to. So as we start to make our way back into this room, we're just grateful. We're grateful for evidence. We're grateful for experience. We're grateful for connection. We're just grateful. We take a deep breath in. And as we let it out, we come back into the room even more. We take another deep breath in. And as we breathe out, we slowly open our eyes. And as we get ready for the offering today, under your chair, or maybe under the chair in front of you, you might find a pencil and a piece of paper. And if you feel so called, put down your name, your contact information, and what gifts you have that you are willing to share with our community. And the board will take all of those, and we will sort through them, and we'll get them to either the right team leader or the right board project manager. And it may be a little while, because we may be waiting for what comes out of the dreaming team as well. But this is an amazing community, and we are all connected, and I so look forward to what happens this next year. Take another deep breath in, and say with me, thank you, God. Thank you, God.